college lies in the middle of a suburban community. Students leave their ghettos and working-class neighborhoods in the inner city and commute by car and trolley to the campus. Most students there are working their way through college. It's not a rich kid's school. They get to go to the university. The state of California spends $6 on each university student for every dollar spent on a state college student's education. State college is designed for the lower and middle-class working people. It produces the teachers, social workers, and middle-level personnel for industry. In the fall and winter of 1968, State College was the scene of the longest and bitterest college strike yet to hit an American campus. The strike continued for 5 long months. At its height, the campus was essentially closed down, with over 80% of the college not attending class and supporting the strike. The so-called silent majority was not very silent. It was out on strike. Black schools joined with other people of color in the Third World Liberation Front. They issued a set of demands. They demanded the power to change the class and racist nature of education.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I don't know who I am because I missed my introduction. I'm teasing, but you are all welcome this morning. Thank you for being here. We have a very, very busy agenda, and we want to make certain that the voices of our leading vanguard veterans is heard, understood, that we have opportunity to reflect on what we hear, and that we all get an opportunity to speak. So we're going to work in a very innovative way today, that this can be as interactive as possible. Before we get started with our full panel, I want to introduce 2 individuals, the third of whom, who is supposed to be part of this group, is caught in traffic coming from the East Bay, Jerry Varnardo. But in a few moments, you're going to hear from Dr. James Garrett, Mr. Benjamin Stewart, we like to call him affectionately Benny, and Jimmy. And we're going to have them make their way up to the podium now, and they're going to provide us with a bit of a narrative where we are going to set the stage for what was going on in the late 60s that led to the strike. Some of you have already heard some of this. Some of you probably think you know all of the background, but as I see your faces, some of you clearly could not have known because, wait, you got that, right? The historic 1968 strike was kicked off by the Black Student Union. There are very few African American faces here this morning. Not sure why, but we're going to lay the history out for you, and we're going to create a narrative that we hope will stay with you for the rest of your lives, and that you will pass it on down the generations. And unlike what has occurred over history, the writing out of history, the role of African Americans in history as being something other than just slaves, something other than the pejorative side of society. We want you to know who we are, what we're all about, and what you may have missed in the lead up to the strike. We were going to show a video first and then have them talk, or we could have them talk and then you see the video. By a show of hands, who wants to see the video first? And who would like to hear the narrative where they set the stage for the video? Hands. Yeah, thanks a lot. That's 50-50.
That again. That's throw a curveball at the end of it.
Okay, I will do it again.
Second way.
Who wants to? Oh, there is Jerry Varnardo. Okay, so we can have our 3 key conceptualizers to the strike. who were there for the first 4 years leading up to the strike, lay a narrative, paint the picture, set the stage for you, then see the video. Or we can do it the other way around. Who wants to hear the narrative first?
I want to hear the narrative.
Hands. Okay, I'm going to say that that's the majority. The privilege of the chair. Sherry, will you join us at the podium, at the stage, please? And the first person who's going to speak to us today is Dr. James Garrett. And he's going to basically give you a history of Black studies and contextualize that to how we ended up going out on strike. Our third speaker will basically connect the dots with the TWLF, Third World Liberation Front. Everybody good on that? Jimmy, the stage is yours. You can speak from there or you can come to the mic.
Better to do it.
You have 7 minutes. You may have 10.
All right.
Actually, I had it all here, so it's okay. I'm going to go quickly on this. I was tasked by Dr. Reverend Tascoe with trying to provide a chronology of how Black studies developed at San Francisco State College. It's not global, but so you can deal with it as best you can. How many members of the Africana Study faculty is here today?
They're all teachers.
Well, we have Dr. Chevron Jones over here.
I didn't see any hands, I'm sorry. Okay, good. We had taken a position as we were formulating the Black Studies, what became the Black Study and Work program, that the faculty had by definition, if they're working in Black Studies, they have to focus their scholarship on starting with the needs of the people based on a statement by Ahmed Sekou Touré, the president of Guinea. And then the second piece is that they have to be involved in a direct way in the social development of our community. Otherwise, the position was that no matter what their level of academic scholarship, they were not qualified to teach in Black studies. They could not separate themselves intellectually or physically, socially from the people. And I'm sure that's the same way it is today. Sekou Touré said that to take part in the African Revolution, it is not enough to write a revolutionary song. He said that poets and writers and researchers and academics should join with the people, and the songs will come of themselves and by themselves. At the moment an academic, a scholar, separates themselves from the people, they become more academic, but they're not partisan. That is, they don't define where they are and how they got to where they are on the basis of the struggles of the people who put them in the position, whatever their scholarship, to have the position in the first place. I'm going to start with 1960, Chronology of Black Studies, San Francisco State. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do this. Thank you to Dr. Montero and the 50th anniversary committee. Thank you to President Wong, and halfway, thank you to Dr. Ramona Tascoe. I don't get to speak on this campus very often. I don't come over here very often, but so she's the reason, or one of the main reasons I'm here. 1960 to 1969 was kind of the high point of the post-World War II Cold War period. The U.S. felt itself embattled over commanding a new global empire, but basically the United States held hegemony over most of the world, or was gaining hegemony over most of the world. So you had a power that was consolidating itself under global capitalism in that period. During that, in fact, this was a high point of that period, and there was at the same time a very weak and narrow socialist group, but they carried on what was called the Cold War. It was not equal war ever, but it was a war. But that war helped catalyze and generate a great many things. The Soviet Union and China cast itself as major powers when they were really basically third world and fourth world nations in terms of their industrial development, education, etc. The other thing that it's characterized, especially here in the Bay Area, was this exceptional, because of the strategic location in the Bay Area. San Francisco and the East Bay manifested a very exceptional growth in ethnic diversity. One of the elements coming out of World War II, one of the key elements coming out of World War II, as the U.S. was moving to replace the former European imperialist nations around the world, was a need for an educated sector, a more expanded, greatly expanded educated sector in technology, administration, social welfare, and many other arenas. And in California, that manifested itself in the expansion of the state college system, and a beneficiary of that was this school, which ultimately was called San Francisco State College. In the Bay Area, there was a strong white working class culture, labor-oriented culture among the white working class. It didn't mean that they weren't racist or not segregationists, but their organizational style, the culture at the home, whether it was the police or ILWU, all tried to center themselves, or were centered within the great power of the various unions. Ultimately, the Black Student Union worked with the ILWU and the San Francisco Unified School District in major struggles. We came to be very close with them over time. The other thing that took place in the 1960s was the kind of an evolutionary process that was catalyzed in 1960 with the anti-HUAC demonstrations, House Un-American Activities demonstrations, which a lot of people, students from San Francisco State, along with veterans and activists, demonstrated against the McCarthyist anti-House Un-American Activities Committee, where held their hearings downtown San Francisco, and the unions like ILWU and a number of others called out people, and that was a thing that catalyzed consciousness of a lot of students. Students who came out of that experience, or some of them who came out of that experience, came back to San Francisco State and formed an organization called SLATE, which was basically kind of a liberal front organization where students could run for office, become involved in student government activities. They became involved in the employment discrimination struggles in the mid-60s. But on the campus, they began to attempt to remake aspects of the campus. They set up a tutorial program, they set up the experimental college, they set up the community involvement program, which was an attempt to imitate or fuse Alinsky style and SNCC style means of organizing or working in communities for community uplift. That was just part of the, I think, a natural development coming out of the post-war era. At the same time, the activist civil rights movement in the South, the consciousness of the activism in the South began to spread north. The work, the notion, the study, the analysis that was endemic in certain urban areas, especially in the Northeast, began to filter down into the movement in the South. And that's particularly in the Black, the struggle for democratic rights in the South. People, at least what I found was, I thought I was sitting with geniuses when I was involved with CORE and SNCC. People were reading not only Black history, they were reading Marxism, about Che, Du Bois, Baldwin, Fanon, Lorraine Hansberry, May Mallory, who some people might know about, who was in North Carolina, Robert Williams in the self-defense movement in South Carolina. She was an incredible writer. They put out a newspaper that people in the Southern Civil Rights Movement stayed very close to. The Black lexicon began to shift from, it added, did you read that, to did you see him, and did you try to hit that? Some of you will understand what that means. Another component was Black GIs who used the GI Bill to come on the campus. A lot of those Black GIs were disaffected during the Vietnam War. Came in, tried to quiet, came to state, for example. Quiet, they used the GI Bill. They didn't use it very much after World War II. They certainly used it out here in California to get that free pass to go to college, because you had the GI Bill. You could go to school for almost nothing. In fact, you got paid to go to school in many instances. So a number of people like Chuck Sizemore and others, Jerry Varnardo, ended up coming here, or using the GI Bill as a means to get their education. 1964-65, in the South, the Mississippi Summer Project, that began to develop the Freedom Schools. I was involved with the Freedom Schools. There are probably many others here who were involved with those too. Urban uprisings, analysis around those. The growing unity with liberation movements, that is the kind of elitist of the movement particularly saw their relationships with the movement in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. In fact, SNCC and the Mississippi movement took up the cudgels, one man, one vote, that came right out of South Africa. Some people put that down because they say it should be one person, one vote. But a lot of people died to be able to say the words, one man, one vote. And the meaning of it then was powerful. It has these periods of some levels of intersectionality. You can't say, it's hard to put that out. But the reality, that's how people live. 63 to 66 at San Francisco State, the formation of the Negro Students Association, formed around the March on Washington and the Birmingham bombings. And it matures, at least from my perspective, it began to mature into a zone of inclusion for Black students. It was a place that Black students could go to that was not a situation of exclusion. For example, with the fraternities and sororities, there is by definition, a sector, an aspect, a component of exclusion. Same thing happened with religious differences. People who are involved in athletics tend to hang together. At the NSA, at least when I arrived, you had people, Black nationalists would hang with themselves and talk to themselves. So people would come together in the NSA, run at that time when I got there by the great Mariana Wadi, who I owe tremendous gratitude to, and I owe a hearty and deeply felt apology to, because when I came in, I was an arrogant 22-year-old Black. You guys never heard of an arrogant 22-year-old Black male. But, there are a few of us who were around at that time who came with our own vision, and we challenged her vision. And instead of grabbing it and uniting with it, I foolishly used a tactic to isolate her from it. And for that, I deeply apologize. I'm sorry for that. Been trying to apologize to her 50 years. In 50 years, she ain't heard a word of it. But that's up to her. Spring of 1966, the NSA changed became the Black Student Union with a goal to essentially we saw the campus as low-hanging fruit. It was a liberal institution, so our job was to take it over, bring people in to train, bring students on the campus, train them to build middle cadre, to send them back out into community as community organizers. That was what we were trying to do. That was an agreement. That's Patricia Rivera, Joanne Mitchell, these two heads over here, a number of others came together. We're going to do this. We're going to bring students on the campus. What Jerry calls that one of the most far-sighted affirmative action programs to take place in this country before affirmative action. Because when I got on the campus, somewhere between 130, 150 students. When I left in the spring of 1968, there were more than 1,200 students. I'm going quick. We took over the tutorial program, 30 students initially, and then we brought 50 more black students through Reggie Major and his Upward Bound program. We brought these students on the campus, and that began to build a critical mass of students. Reggie probably fed us, 250, 300 students over a period of a couple of years. We brought them in, gave orientation, got them involved, got them work-study money, because of the work-study money that kept them on campus. And then we began to work, moved out to work in various sectors. We tripled the size of the tutorial program in a period of a year. So that's how students, non-white students, became more and more involved in the tutorial program, and they were also being paid because nobody had any money. So people had to have that $2 an hour, $1.80 to $2.20 an hour was big money in those days. But when we ran into, we had all this consciousness going. We had political education cast going on. We had later the formation of Black Panther. All these groups had all these education programs going on. At Laney, they had the Black curriculum, Merit, it was the Black curriculum. And that Black curriculum was a 2-year program that they were working seriously to put into place. So we had a big problem because the young kids had the kids who were being tutored had high level of consciousness, I'm black and I'm proud, and many of the students who were tutoring them, black students who were tutoring them, were struggling with their own consciousness and their self-worth. And two of our sisters had a nervous breakdown. So we had to settle this issue. So George Mary called a meeting together. We decided that we need to take all these pieces, Black Arts and Culture series, Leroy Jones and Sonia Sanchez had just come here. We need to put these into some kind of umbrella, and that's what happened. In the fall of 1966, late fall, I wrote a document called A Program for Black Study and Work. Brought that back to the Black Student Union. It was edited by a sister by the name of Pamela Igashira, who was a Japanese woman who was born in concentration camps in the United States and was a cold-hearted black nationalist. She was coldest black, she was to the coldest, colder than Malcolm X in terms of her point. She did not like white folks. She was born in a concentration camp. So, but she saw her relationship, her work could be best done through aiding black struggles. So she was the editor. The only person who added to that program, give me a minute, the only person who added to that program was Mariana Wadi. I need to say that because I think, my view is, she put meat on the bones. My view is that Mariana Wadi is the mother of Black Studies, and Nathan Hare is the father of Black Studies. By the fall of '67, the Instructional Policy Committee and the Academic Senate had decided to adopt the Institute for Black Studies. They thought that money was coming from Carnegie, I believe, $220,000. We would get a portion of that. So Summerskill, now I met with Summerskill probably once or twice a week. Summerskill didn't make any major decisions about policy unless one of us met with him. Summerskill was a key. Summerskill and Fred Thalheimer were the two allies, real allies, who had any level of trust, at least so far as I was concerned. We started looking for a person to run that program because the academic senate said he had to have that person had to have a PhD. There was never any debate about Nathan Hare. The struggle with Nathan Hare is that he wanted to continue his work back east. So he had to be convinced, and he was convinced, and we brought him in. I'm taking one more minute. I'm ending with this. What happened was that the work, when Nathan arrived 1 year, almost 1 year to the day, after the adoption of the Black Studies program. Nathan's work was to take the basic work that we had done and put that into an institutional framework. That's what makes Nathan so important at the first level. So my thing is to make sure that people understand the history, that the chronology. Sometimes we need to adopt a father, or the father of this and the father of that, because we need that. We have a need for it. If you need to have a founder, it's when I got here, the founder, the dream, the real dream, was already crystallizing. There was already a movement there, and that movement, so far as I could see, was being led by Mariana Wiley. Thank you very much.
I want you to know that I know it's difficult to contain such a rich history in such a short period of time. And so we want to stop and give Dr. Garrett an applause. And we want everyone to know that there will be more opportunity for him to expand as you have questions, okay? Who wants to speak next? Let's hear from Attorney Jerry Varnardo. At the time, Jerry was the on-campus coordinator of the BSU.
November 7th, Jim was.
Dr. Wong, Dr. Montero, and Dr. Tascoe. Can you hear me out there?
Yes.
This time last year, I had helped organize a Black Studies conference at Mississippi State University. Grew up in Mississippi, and I could never go to that college campus. Just to go over there meant I would probably get a beating and get arrested. When we had that conference, all of the Black Studies faculty brought all of their Black Studies students to the conference. Benny was there on the panel, Garrett, Ramona, and myself. And that is what should be done here. I'm not afraid to say these things. That is what should be done here. All of those students should be here along with the faculty. Amen. Anybody agree to that?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Secondly, I'm supposed to talk about, is Crutchfield still here?
He's
I
here.
don't see him. Right there. Oh, yeah. I'm supposed to talk about the strike and what led up to the strike. First, I think that the department should have courses called The History of Black Studies and Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University, and all of the faculty should be required to take those courses.
Yes. Yes.
Because people are just talking off their head and making stuff up. And I think that each ethnic group should have their own course to tell their own story, like Al and Mason and Ron Kittiche and Roger and Juanita.
Kenny.
Yeah, all of these brothers and sisters should have an opportunity to tell their own story. That's just getting started. When we started planning for this strike, we had a Black Student Union Central Committee. That was 12 people. And then each member of the Central Committee had 2 people that worked with them called presidium members. Each presidium member, if one of us got arrested, Then the presidium member moved to the Central Committee. I think Sharon Truscanow was my presidium person, and Robert Prudhomme. So I got arrested a lot. And all of us who did get arrested for different things had to go to a prison. I want Nesby Crutchfield to stand up. He's one of the And when we were in jail or prison or whatever you call it, I had a year, and I never thought that there would be a Black Studies when I got out. I was only concerned about getting out.
That's right.
You know, that was more important. Yes.
He still saying?
Huh? No, you can sit now.
You still give all the orders, right?
I just want to acknowledge him. So, me and George Murray never thought that this thing would happen. And we got out and people had courses and apartments, and it kind of scared us because we hardly came around because maybe they put us back on lockdown. When I got ready to get out, after about 8 or 9 months, the day that I was supposed to get out, a riot happened at San Quentin, and George Jackson them killed some guards, and then I had to stay in an additional amount of time. But back to the organization of the strike. All of the students who had come in had to take, not had to, but wanted to take political education classes. These classes taught how to conduct strikes, movements, and me coming out of the South had seen this all my life. The black fraternities and sororities came to us, and they told us that they couldn't use the facilities at San Francisco State, but the white sororities and fraternities were allowed to do that. So we had to do something about that. Garrett was there. I came in 1963, before Mariana or Jimmy Garrett. I was with the Negro Student Association almost from the very beginning. So these sororities and fraternities came to us, and you had to deal with fairness. You deal with fairness in every aspect of your life. It was unfair for these sororities and fraternities to pay fees and tuitions and were just summarily told that they couldn't use these facilities. So immediately they became part of the Black Student Union, part of us. They never got credit for it, but they were already organized. Right. They knew how to make signs. They knew how, they had a communication line. So you wanted them right in there with you, especially the women. The women had organized everything down to a T. So we had them. Then we wanted George Murray to be retained as an instructor. We wanted Dr. Hare to be there, and we wanted to support these people. And as time went by, we wanted more students to be admitted to San Francisco State. Now, Garrett didn't tell you what admissions under our affirmative action program meant. It meant that you gave us your name, your telephone number, and your address. And we had the administration send you out a letter of admission. Danny Glover got one. Attorney George Colbert got one. It's just as good a model as getting your instructor in high school to write your letter and all the rest of this stuff. That kind of stuff is a matter of exclusion. What we wanted was inclusion. My son was in the military, and he went to recruit some people for the United States Military Academy at West Point. and he went to an Indian reservation. And he said this young man had all of the qualities, but was afraid to apply. He had to tell him, listen, if the United States Military Academy wants you there, it's nobody's business. You know, just go ahead and apply. You had to actually convince people, and we had to go out to Hunters Point and other places, Western Addition, to convince people to come to a college campus. Now, when I was growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, I was going to a high school, and every day that I went home, I had to cross Jackson State University. And that made me want to go to college because all the pretty women were over there. These guys were over there coming over to my high school, dating those girls. And I said, like, that's good enough to want to go to college. So it was a wonderful experience just crossing and finding out that black people could run a college. But I think that I've taken up too much time right now. Benny is going to close it out on how the effects of the strike and the things that we did, how it affected the college. But I want to see those black students in these conferences. I want people to know that I said that. Tell them Jerry said it.
Yeah.
You know, and I did say it. They should be here. And all of the other students in ethnic studies. Where else would you be?
Right.
You know, Jerry said this, so thank you.
Thank you, Jerry Varnardo. You know, we have Benny Stewart who's going to talk to us in a moment, but I want to connect some dots. Jimmy has laid some background history, general history, what was going on nationwide, locally within the state of California and in the Bay Area. Jerry is giving you just a little taste of the cultural component of what was driving us to move in the direction of a strike. He's also given you some of the consternations, the disgruntlement that was building at that time that eventually led to the launch of the strike. If you haven't connected those dots, it's there. But in this challenge for time, we can't get it all out there. But I guarantee you, as we interact, it'll become more clear. Benny, let me have you come up now. And Benny has a way of making things plain. And very simple, succinct. Succinct.
Get out of the way.
Okay.
Good morning. Let me take us back to the strike, all right? So, and let me just say this, is that we're identified a lot by the strike, but you know, and we're called strikers. But to me, what these veterans were developers, pioneers of ethnic studies. And it's the ethnic study idea that went nationwide. That's one. Two, the ethnic study concept has lived so long and it continues to grow. An ethnic studies concept had some powerful enemies. Joe Alioto, who was the mayor, Ronald Reagan, who was the governor, right? Who later became president. We won't talk about the CIA and all that other stuff, but some of us have found out by getting the information thing what they were really doing, okay? And then Tricky Dick. Oh, excuse me. Richard Nixon. So we had some power, and then Hayakawa. We had some powerful enemies, but yet still we prevailed. Okay? That's the most important thing. And let me basically tell you that basically what Jimmy did, Jimmy kind of rounded us up inspired us and got us focused on doing something. To me, his contribution, he was an organizer, but his contribution was taking it to a programmatic level. Meaning that let's get some programs and create something that will stay on this campus when we leave. So when new students are coming in, they will be able to partake of this, and thusly things grow. Okay? So we started that. Nathan, Jimmy must have negotiated for a year and a half, 2 years. And the outcome of that negotiation came out to 2.5 teaching positions. That's what that came out to, which was crumbs. But the trustees of the state told us, take it or lump it. That's where it really went down. And the Central Committee and the black students, and I focus and say this because the rest of TWLF was still evolving. And the thought and consciousness was not there as early as it was with us, but it came, okay? So we started organizing, and then somebody came up with strike, okay? But up underneath that, the Central Committee brothers knew that, hey, this is a Super Bowl fight. If we lose this, ain't nothing happening, all right? So we kind of sit around, which I think students do, and how are we going to go at this? And one thing that we changed the approach of the entire country. Usually students would go and take over administration building, right? Sit there, wait a day or two, wait to get their heads beat in, and it was over with. So everybody agreed that that wasn't what was happening. Okay? And I knew they wanted me for the Gator situation. So I wasn't going to just sit there and wait for the tax squad to bust my head in. So we came up with a concept of protracted struggle. Protracted struggle was drawn out. And I want to take a moment, because I do see some of them, which is a group that was effective, but they never got recognition. And that is the war of the flea cadres. You know, they did a lot. And a few of them was caught, and they did penitentiary time. But the war of the flea cadres did what they needed to do to disrupt things. And you know who you are, because everybody wasn't caught. But I just want to stop and give you that respect for what you did. The rest of us went on the picket lines. Everybody saw that, right? Harassing students coming in. But the outcome of that process was the longest student faculty strike in American history. We didn't know it was going to be that long, but it was the concept of having a protracted struggle. In that process, some 600 that was 600 arrests that went on. And what we learned early on, if you can't get your troops out of jail, you're losing them. So we had huge bail funds in the mass bus, which was 457. That was my number. I was caught up in that. We had to raise a lot of bail money to get people out, and that kind of broke us in terms of our financing do that, but we all pulled that together. Now, I have only a little while to go, but let me just kind of summarize some things. Jimmy put it in a platform where it was programmatic, and then from there, we had to fight because not just the local administration, but the state turned us down. So we took them on, and we won that. We had many arrests because it was a struggle of coalitions. Third World Liberation Front, AFT. But let me just say, those three major entities was rolling up their sleeves and fight because everybody had something to get out of the struggle. The AFT could get better paying jobs. Ethnic studies could get, and also SDS. I don't want to forget them. Is there any SDS people here? And I want to say they was dealing with the war, but they was right along there with us. They got busted, and we all came in and we fought together. I saw John Levin last night. Is he here? But anyway, they're pulling my coat, and
You don't want your coat pulled by that lady.
okay.
You don't want trouble.
And let me just wrap up this part. Post-strike, but before the next semester, we had to raise bail money funds for legal defense. And there was a legal defense committee. I don't know if there's any members here.
Is Moderator here?
And we had to raise money. And let me just say that I want to give thanks to Marin County, because we had some hellified concerts.
Terry Ott.
Terry Ott and Charles Turner's mother helped us out. She's gone on now to where we was able to raise money. She's punching me in the back. And I just trying to cover everything. But I'm going to tell you this. I think I was more concise than my people who came ahead to give me All right. Okay. We need a referee.
They say I'm too sweet for them to swing on me. So, this much I know. Men talk more than women. It's a secret, but they just showed it, didn't they? Okay. But we're now going to, you probably see we're modifying the program. Those of you who are veteran strikers, don't worry, don't go anywhere, because we're going to ask you to stand. We're going to have you identify your name, what role you played. That opportunity will come, but for right now, we're going to stop and look at some video. You've seen the stage set. Now let's watch a little bit of this video, and then we will come back and have people identify who they are, and we'll have the remainder of our speakers come to the podium.